welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Similry Breast Pumps. From ultra tiny pumps as small as a sticky note to fully adjustable pumps with 85 setting combinations that are also still not very big. They're very small. And pumps have come a long way. The S6, their 85 setting combination pump is like very small. And you're in control of your pumping journey with all of those settings and it being very small and quiet. But we will hear more from our sponsor a little later. But you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page. If you ever need anything, see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, you can scroll down and enter your email address and we will send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are on Patreon and it's a fun place to be where we get to kind of hang out on our Zoom hangouts. And there's some original content over there from Dianne and I. And you can head to the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, and you will see a link to Patreon. And you can check out if any of those tiers look good to you. And we are still hosting our ongoing giveaway for people who leave reviews around the internet. Anywhere you can leave a review, whether it's stars or written or those are the only two I can think of. But if you have another way somewhere, just do it and then send a screenshot over to Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com, along with your address. And we'll send you a goodie bag of thank you for nursing in public cards and podcast stickers, fun things. And now, Dianne, here's our review of the week.
Yes, I do. And this says we are very educational, which I love because I don't know, was that our goal ever to be very educational?
I mean, yeah.
So. Yeah.
Somewhat informational and somewhat horribly offensive. That was the goal.
I love that. If you're just joining us, that was a review somebody had left once, and we made T-shirts out of it because we loved it so much.
Yes, 2 stars, somewhat informational, somewhat horribly offensive. And you can, I mean, I was like, that's the best thing that anyone's ever said about me. And the horribly offensive part was the episode that we did about bed sharing, where we shared some science about beneficial bed sharing and safe bed sharing, and they did not like that. But yeah, it's a good shirt. If you want one, you can also find that at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com.
But this one says we're very educational. I am a dietetic student who is planning on also becoming a lactation consultant, and this podcast has been a great way for me to learn more about breastfeeding. I love that you are a dietetic student about to be, who wants to become a lactation consultant. We need you. We need you in this world.
Yeah.
So get on the stick, get on your horse and do it.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who wants to join the field of lactation, it's a good thing. Good time to do it. Good thing to do.
Absolutely. If you have an interest in it, a lot of times people get interested in it after they breastfeed their own babies. Then they become then they start helping their family members or their friends. And then they're like, this is something I want to do. And you can do that. You don't have to be a healthcare worker to start. And I think we do have an episode about this.
Yeah.
That we did ages ago. Yeah, we did it ages ago. But you can totally become one. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
And if you are a healthcare worker, if you're a nurse or something, I feel like you're then ahead of the game, right? Because you've got a lot of the classes already that you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're already ahead of the game. So give it a consideration if anybody's thinking about it. Because we definitely need you. There's so many babies out there, so many families that need the help. So
yeah, being born into this world of nonsense information.
So thank you for sending that in for us. And I hope you're listening. And hopefully you're going to learn a little something today. We're going to talk about oversupply, which is another thing we haven't talked about in a while. But questions come in about it all the time. Oh, my God. All the time.
Yeah. Or people want it. people strive for an oversupply.
Yes, but it's not a good thing to have. So we're going to talk a little bit about it because sometimes people don't realize that they have it even, or they're not sure about it, or they're like, how did this happen? Or they're very conscious of it. And how do they get rid of it? So oversupply is also called hyperlactation. That's the other name for it. It's hyperlactation. And this is when you make more milk than what you need. That's basically what oversupply is. You're making more milk than what you need to have for your baby. And this can happen by accident, usually by accident. But sometimes women just make too much milk. Sometimes new mothers just make too much milk. Like it's just a part of their genetic makeup. They just make more milk than what is needed.
Yeah, like we had that extreme case, Elizabeth, from 1 ounce at a time, who she has, I guess it's hyperlactation. I feel like it was a longer word, but maybe there's just like another longer word for it. But she makes like way too much milk, and she donates to like families for their entire breastfeeding journey.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of times people with hyperlactation will do. They will donate their milk, which is an amazing thing that you can do. But the other thing that I see more of is early pumping.
Yeah.
And that can really cause a lot of breastfeeding problems when you pump too early. And sometimes it's necessary. One of our listeners had messaged in one time, and we did a consult, and she had been separated from her baby, which sometimes happens, right? Like there was jaundice and, other situations happening, and they were separated and she had to pump. So sometimes that happens, and then that can cause an oversupply, which then once you get your baby back with you and you're trying to just breastfeed, it's like a mess because you have all this milk and you have to try to rein it in. And that can be a little bit hard. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we were going to talk about like why that happens, like maybe it's obvious that if you're pumping milk on top of breastfeeding, that your body is going to just start making more milk because it thinks that it's needed.
Yeah. Especially in those first couple weeks.
Yeah. Your body's going to make as much milk as is being asked of it, which is amazing and wonderful. But if you don't need all of that, that's problematic.
And this becomes a problem. Like I see it more now because I see people in the hospital, like come out of the hospital pumping, and they're in the hospital, and, very like good intended healthcare workers might say, oh, let's get your milk to come in faster. Let's have you pump, or, whatever.
Yeah.
But then they come out of the hospital pumping, and they're still pumping, and the baby is feeding fine, but then they're still pumping. And if you're doing that on top of breastfeeding in those first 2 weeks of life, where your baby is trying to determine how much milk they need and tell your body how much milk they need, you're just going to double your supply. Yeah. And that is really, really hard to slow down once you've got it going. You can, but it can be difficult, and it can cause problems for both you and the baby. Because sometimes people be like, well, what's wrong with having too much milk? There's definite things that can happen when you have too much milk. And that's not, it sounds like a great problem to have, but it can be problematic. So some signs of oversupply, like maybe you don't quite know that you have an oversupply, and that can definitely happen where people don't even realize they have it. Sometimes I'll have people say things to me like, oh my gosh, I'm just not emptying. Or that's why they start pumping, because they feel like my breasts don't feel empty after the baby's done feeding. So I pump until I'm empty. And it's like, then that's going to trigger more milk to come. So you are going to feel like your body isn't emptying out because you have more milk than what the baby needs. So if you just kind of let it go, and let your body adjust, then your body's going to adjust back to what the baby needs. Sometimes those babies might like cough, choke, sputter on that milk when they're drinking. You know, they go to feed and then all this milk lets down at them and they're like not quite ready for it. And they're like, oh my God, you're like waterboarding them. Poor little babies. But then they end up with then they pull off and they're like choking and it's just more milk than what they can handle. So that is a sign of oversupply. That if your baby is doing that, they're getting like all of this milk all of a sudden.
Yeah.
That is a sign of oversupply. If they're gulping, like really gulping a lot of milk down, that is a sign of oversupply. And of course, those things can make your baby gassy. So that might make them really uncomfortable, really unhappy because they're super gassy from all this gulping and guzzling and choking down milk. Sometimes babies are pretty smart and sometimes they can like clamp down on your nipple to slow the flow of milk. I know. But that would slow the flow of milk for them so that they can eat like a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah.
So you might see babies doing that. Aren't they smart?
Yeah.
They're little, survival, they figure things out. So that might cause obviously pain with the feedings. They might have, they might cry during the feed because again, gas. And that would be really uncomfortable for them if they're trying to eat and they get gas pains. So you might see them pulling off and crying. You might see them like pulling their legs in, stiffening up a little bit. All that stuff is like gassy. Take them off, burp them more frequently. See if you can get them to be a little bit more comfortable. And then you're like struggling. Like these feeds feel like a struggle. Like they feel like a battle. It's like, oh my gosh, this baby like coming on and off and they're sputtering and they're choking and they're gulping and then they get gas. And then it's just, it just feels like a struggle every time you're feeding them. It's not like this easy, they go on, they eat, they come off, they burp, they're happy. It's not like that. They might be shorter feeds because they fill up quickly. Again, that is like, sometimes that could be some air going in because of the gulping, but they're also just filling up very quickly on the milk that lets down first. So that can be happening. Those feeds might be really quick, really fast feeds. Those feedings might not be as high in fat because the baby is filling up very quickly. So they might want to go back to eating again very quickly after that. They might have green poop. And if you were listening last week, we had a question come in about the mother having an oversupply, which is why we were talking about doing this episode. And then green poop. We were talking about green poop. Uh-huh. Green poop is really common with oversupply. And that is because the baby, like the milk that comes out first is high in lactose, which can digest very quickly and go through their system very quickly, which can lead to green poop because it's not being digested. It's just like really kind of racing through their little systems. So it can cause green poop and it can cause a little bit of irritation, which sometimes you see blood with that as well. Or sometimes they might be like explosive poops too. So like
super watery and
yes. Yeah. They might spit up a lot. You see that with babies that are getting a lot of milk because they're spitting up quite a bit. And that is they're just getting a lot of milk. They're just getting a lot of milk. So they end up like spitting up more. You might feel like with that choking and sputtering with them with the letdown, that might be a very painful letdown for you. So I don't know. Did you used to feel your letdowns?
I could feel them sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I could feel, I remember especially with the twins, very painful letdowns.
Yeah.
And that usually comes with like an oversupply kind of situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, well, I certainly didn't have an oversupply. I don't think.
Like I said, your breast may never feel empty. You might always feel like you're full. You might have plugged milk ducts, can lead to mastitis, leaking a lot, just a lot of stuff that goes on with an oversupply that you just don't want to have.
I mean, just mastitis alone. Like, we really need to do whatever we can do to minimize our risk of mastitis.
Right.
You know, that's just awful. It's terrible. You're like, you're just in pain.
Yeah. It feels like you have the flu.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
You can't parent well with mastitis, and you want to not have that. And that's really common with oversupply, right? I mean, like,
yeah, it can be common with oversupply because you just have too much milk in the breast. So should we take a break?
Yeah, we should. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Today's episode is brought to you by Similary Breast Pumps. Similary Breast Pumps wants you to have control of your pumping journey. With a continuous focus on research and development, as well as a team comprised of certified lactation consultants, Similary Breast Pumps strives to offer pumps for every lifestyle. They have ultra tiny pumps that are as small as a sticky note, to fully adjustable pumps with 85 combination settings. And like you heard me say, they're still very small. You're in control of your pumping journey with whatever pump you choose, with resources like virtual breast shield sizing consults in English and Spanish, and an exclusive Get the Right Fit program that offers a third set of breast shields for free. Similary gives you vital tools for a successful journey. A safe choice for everyone. All Similary pump parts and storage bags are phthalate, BPA, and BPS free. And better yet, the Similary breast pumps can be personalized with a fun pump skin decal. Check out their entire pump family at similarybreastpumps.com. Similary is CIMILRE breastpumps.com. And you can use code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase. And also check with them at their website about whether or not you can get your pump covered by insurance. And you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for this information and information about all of our sponsors, as well as our resources page, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
Yes. So how this can affect the baby. One of the other things I see a lot too with oversupply is babies gaining a lot of weight, like quickly gaining a lot of weight. And that can kind of be a clue like, okay, this baby's getting a lot of milk. Mom's got a lot of milk. This could be an oversupply situation. So sometimes that is kind of what we see first. When I was working in the pediatric office, it was kind of funny because I would see parents come in, baby would be fussy, spitting up, gassy, green poop, gaining a lot of weight, and they would be diagnosed with lactose allergy, with a milk protein allergy. And I'm like, because it looks, the symptoms mirror each other. Mm-hmm. So, and I remember like telling them one time, like this is an oversupply issue. This isn't a milk, like a dairy problem. And they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah, the symptoms are the same. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, symptoms are the same. So you really do get the same kind of symptoms. You get the green poop, you get the colicky symptoms with an oversupply that you would if you have a dairy, if your baby has like a dairy intolerance. Mm-hmm. So make sure if your baby was diagnosed, if somebody told you, oh, your baby could have a dairy problem, then make sure that it's not an oversupply issue, because it could be just an oversupply, maybe not a dairy thing. So definitely make sure you're seeing a lactation consultant for something like that, because they can help you to determine what is oversupply and what is not oversupply.
Yeah.
So that is kind of like what can happen to mothers and what can happen to babies with it. But now what do you do with it? Like, or how do you know? So some people, sometimes you can tell with pumping. Like I'll ask somebody like, how much milk are you getting when you pump? And if they're like, oh yeah, I get like 6 ounces, like that's an oversupply for sure. So some lactation professionals think that if a parent is getting more than 3 ounces, that's an oversupply. And parents will be like, and I'll tell people that, and parents will be like, seriously, like 3 ounces is an oversupply? Like a lot of people think that. Yeah, a lot of lactation professionals will die on that hill and say like 3 ounces is an oversupply. It's just
anything that's more than your baby needs, right?
Right.
Like that's just in there causing problems. That's where it comes down. That's what it comes down to, right? I mean,
yeah.
And we don't know what to expect. We see like, here's this bottle. The bottle is this big, and I eat this much food, and that we just don't know. We don't understand that like a baby's stomach is very small. Like this whole bottle is not. This bottle is way too much. Holds way too much milk for a baby to drink. It shouldn't be filled up. We just don't know what to expect. So then we just think it's not enough, because that's also something that we just sort of default to, like it's not enough. We need more.
Yeah. And I think people don't realize too, like when they're pumping, what is normal for pumping.
Right.
And people really don't think, like we've said it a million times on this podcast, babies, even at a year, will only take about 4 ounces of milk, breast milk. If you're formula feeding, that's different. But with breast milk changes to accommodate what your baby needs. So you don't need to increase the volume like you would with formula, because formula doesn't change. Formula is what it is. And you have to increase the amount of formula that you're giving to get the amount of calories, the amount of protein, the amount of fat, the vitamins, nutrients, all that stuff. So with breast milk, you don't have to do that. And if people don't realize that, they pump 3 ounces of milk and they're like, well, when my baby is going to need 6 ounces of milk or 7 ounces of milk or 8 ounces of milk, how am I going to keep up?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, you're never going to keep up because your baby never needs that much.
That would be way too much milk to have in there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Your body. Yeah. Like nature didn't set it up like that. That'd be crazy. But you know what else is crazy, which I'm just realizing right now as you're talking about this, that formula companies they jump through so many hoops to try to like come up with like the greatest marketing thing, right? Like toddler milk and, this is good for bellies and all this stuff. Why don't they come up with a formula that's like it's like more nutrient dense for like older babies, so that they're not, because like one of the problems with formula is like overfeeding, right? And like overweight babies, and we talk about childhood obesity or whatever. What if they just like made it more nutrient dense so that the baby wouldn't have to take so much?
Wouldn't that be smart?
Yeah. I guess then they'd have to explain the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, which who knows? Who knows what they're thinking? So a couple of things that you can do to make things easier on your baby is you can adjust the position that you're feeding the baby in. So if you are laying down, and I know you can't lay down all the time, wish we could, but
yeah.
When you can, or just recline, if you can recline or lay back, that will help your baby, because gravity will slow the flow of milk, and that will help them. So being able to recline a little bit or being able to just completely side lie, that will help your baby to manage the flow a little bit easier, and they will do a little bit better with that. So you can try to adjust positioning. Some people will express a little bit, like just hand express a little bit first, so that the baby isn't getting overwhelmed when they first get on. of course, you have to be really careful with that. Like I would say hand express it instead of hook yourself up to a pump, because then you're just, we're just playing with fire when we
back into the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can take the baby off as soon as they start to, like, if it's an issue where they're choking and on the milk and stuff, take them off, let the milk spray for a minute, catch it in a towel or whatever. If you can catch it in a haka, that'd be great. But if you can't, just put a towel over the breast and wait till things kind of calm down and then put the baby back on. A lot of times they'll kind of come off on their own, coughing. But if they don't, then break the seal, take them off, and, let everything kind of go, so that they get more comfortable.
Yeah.
One of the things that you can do with an oversupply issue is called block feeding. And what that is like where you just feed on one side for a certain amount of time. So you might feed on one side for 2 feedings and then feed on the other side for 2 feedings, or feed on one side per feeding, whichever, it might depend on what is going on with your oversupply. That's why if you're doing something like this, you really should be working with a lactation consultant, because they can help you to kind of determine what you would need. But that's all block feeding is you're feeding on one breast per feeding, and you are just kind of slowing. What that does is when you're leaving milk in the other breast, it's just kind of slowing down your production. So that kind of helps things to slow down a little bit. You can, if you're feeling full on that other breast, you can hand express a little bit of milk out to where you're feeling comfortable, not to where you're emptying out the breast, because then you're getting into that problem again, right? You're getting into that, the more you empty, the more your body is going to refill. But then people get nervous. They're like, well, what if I'm not feeding on both sides, am I going to get mastitis? You can just empty that breast a little bit to where you're comfortable. And that will help you to kind of stay comfortable and help your breasts kind of get to where we need them to be. If you have to pump, only pump as much milk as what your baby needs. Don't try to completely empty the breast. That's another thing that happens. People try to pump until they can, get no more milk. If you are somebody who pumps 6 ounces of milk and your baby only needs 3, see if you can just pump the 3, and that's it. Pump for amount, not for time. And that will help your supply to adjust again. As you go on with time, like your body is going to adjust to supply, like readjust again. Usually around that 3-month mark, your body kind of readjusts and things kind of start to settle in a little bit more. And you might find that your baby is having a little bit easier of a time with feeds. You don't have to switch position, like lay down anymore maybe, or you're not, leaking all the time. You might just find that you're a lot more comfortable after that 3-month mark. And that's your body just like naturally settling into that supply. So it's probably kind of calming itself down a little bit. If you're somebody that has to go back to work full time, and you're working if you go back to work around that 3-month mark, you might find that doing more pumping than breastfeeding, because that's what a lot of times when you go back to work, you find that you're doing more pumping than actual breastfeeding. You might find that your supply is kind of settling in that way too. So it doesn't mean forever if you are dealing with an oversupply. It's just, it can feel like long and hard because, like I said, those feeds can really become difficult.
Yeah, when your baby needs to eat every hour or two, and every time it's a struggle. I mean, oh my God, that gets old real fast.
So some people will use medical approaches too, which could be like if it's a really bad oversupply situation, like cold medicine, things like Sudafed, Benadryl, those will lessen your supply. I mean, those things are made to dry you up, like secretions. you know, when you take things like Benadryl and Sudafed. So that can actually like dry up your milk supply. I definitely wouldn't play around with something like that unless you're working with somebody. Birth control pills, because like a regular birth control pill that's high in estrogen can kill, you know, not, I don't want to say kill your supply, but it will lessen your supply. So you might want to be really cautious about stuff like that. Because you want to just try to control it as naturally as possible so that you still have the milk you need for your baby, but you're not uncomfortable and full all the time. That's the main goal.
Right. So you're trying to get through the first few months, because eventually it will just by itself even out. Yes.
Yeah. It will by itself even out. But in the beginning, when those babies are so little and they're feeding so frequently, plus, I mean, you don't want to, I've had people that are like, oh yeah, well, I feel full, so I pump. And I know I mentioned this earlier too. I still feel full after the baby eats, so I pump, which leads to an oversupply. Now they're stuck in that cycle of feeding and pumping constantly. And who wants to do that all the time?
No.
That's a lot to do. You don't want to have this oversupply. We want to control it so that it's not problematic. And like I said, there's so many problems that come along with it that you end up, you know, you're struggling, the baby's struggling, nobody's happy, everybody's leaking milk and full. It's like you're full, the baby's spitting up. You got milk leaking all over the place. You got the mastitis flu. Yeah, mastitis can happen. So there's just a lot that goes on that can really, you know, just get in the way of making feeding easy and happy. And you don't want it to be. You don't want it to be a struggle every single time you have to feed your baby. No. Yeah. So try not to. So if it's happening with you, and if it's one of those situations where you did have to pump early on and now it's caused an oversupply and you don't know what you're going to do, and you're trying to control it and it's really difficult, you can control, like you will be able to get it under control. You really will. But it can be a struggle while you're doing it. But it's important to try to maintain your supply to just what your baby needs, not over what babies need. And then you've got like all this milk in the freezer and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's just so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you have it.
So that is what we do with oversupply.
If you need help. Yeah. What? What'd you say?
I said, that's what we deal with oversupply.
Oh, that's what we do with oversupply. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.